In today's tutorial, we're going to examine Bernat Alize Blanket EZ, and I'm going to show you the technical aspects with this yarn and why it's so innovative and a lot of fun. When you're looking at the ball, you see all these loops hanging out, but it's when you slide off the ball band is when the magic appears, and all these loops seem to make a lot of sense. Now this is a no needle, no hook yarn, so what are you going to use? Well, you're going to use your fingers, and there's an advantage to how these are looped in order to have the most perfect projects ever. So when you're looking at stuff like you can see on the label, absolutely you can achieve that, and there's really not a lot of technical things that you need to know in order to get it, which is really quite fun, which makes it innovative and fun. So let's continue and examine this yarn more carefully. So I'm going to pull the yarn exactly how it would come out of the ball. So you can see that it's not completely perfectly lined up when you go to pull it out, and that's okay. Give it a good shake, and the loops seem to make a lot of sense, and the ones that are kind of out of sync, you just have to just kind of force it to sit down, which is really quite awesome. So you'll see that it's almost like a clothesline of all these loops that come up, and they are working with each other. So let's talk about the technical aspects on being able to start your project. So you're going to see that there's no starting strand in order to do that, in order to weave in your end. So they recommend that you cut a loop, but it's very strategic because of the way that this is manufactured. So when you're looking at this yarn, this is the same strand that is going up and down and forming these loops, and when it goes up and comes back down, it affixes down to attach the bottom sections together in order to form the loops. Each one of these loops are exactly the same size, so that means that tension on your project is reliant on these loops and not your fingers when you're going to pull through. Therefore everybody's projects will end up the very same size because the loops are the same size. So if you have to weave in your ends, how are you going to do that with these loops? Well, the answer is really quite simple. So because this is all one complete strand and it's attached at the bottom, all you just need to do is that you just have to open it up like this at the bottom and just insert your scissors, and it will find the strand that is attaching it, and simply the loop is completely gone. So this is a really kind of a neat idea. So if you need a longer strand in order for you to be able to weave in your ends, you can just cut as many loops as you need to do it. Now when you're doing round circles with this, you need to cut these loops in order to have a strand like this so that you can form the very start of a circle when you're going to do it. So this is a great way to do it. So when you're finishing a project, you will want to cut maybe 1 or 2 loops in order for you to weave in your ends, and if you want to start your project, you can do that as well. And it's really quite awesome. So even though you cut it, you don't actually impact the next loop in order to play with this yarn even more. So when you go to start a project, each one of the loops represents a stitch. So it's not like crochet where you crochet a certain amount and then add extra in order to build up to the next row. So for example, let's just count out 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So those 6 are now your project. So the next one here is going to feed underneath this one here. So all you're just going to do is that you're going to just feed it through the loop in order to bring it through. Now what I recommend is that because we're moving in this direction, have the strand come kind of in front of it like this, and so what you're doing is you're pulling it down and then up into the loops as you go. Right? It's really quite simple. So you're just going to follow the sequence. Now when you're starting for the very first time, it's a little bit fumbly. I'm not even going to deny that, but once you get used to the hand motions of this yarn, it gets really quite addictive in order to put everything together. So I'm just easy knitting, it's called. I'm just easy knitting my way across. So I pull through. So after you pull through, what you want to do is that you want to tug on these loops. So these loops are going to stop at the base of one of these things. That's why the tension is controlled by the loops. So when you pull up, you're not impacting and pulling out a loop from something else. You're just pulling it up so it matches up there. What you're also going to do is that when you pull up, you want to make sure that it looks like it's in sequence as well. So you're going to pull, because what can happen is that if you have a twist to it, which is an actual type of stitch, is that it'll appear in your projects. So you want to pull up so all the stitches look in line with each other, like for the best results. So this is kind of the stocking knit stitch here. So you can see that this loop is kind of turned. So what you want to do is that when you go to feed it, you just want to feed it so it makes sense. So to go back across, you just grab the very next one and start in the very first one again. And because you're going this way now, you want to move this back and then pull it back into your project like this. And I recommend that because what can happen is that if you don't get yourself organized is that you can actually skip some loops and you will not realize it until you turn the project over that you may have missed a loop. So this is one of those projects where I think that you need to practice a little bit in order to get started, but I will guarantee you that the more that you ease in it, the quicker it will get. So I'm just grabbing the loops and pulling them through. Just like that. So there's all kinds of different stitches that you can do with this type of yarn, and as soon as you've gone all the way across, just go back through, just give them a tug and it'll pull it through. And so I can tell that this one seems to be upside down, so when I pull, see, I'm just realigning to make sure it makes sense. And it's better to do it now than it is to do midway through the project and then get confused, and therefore you have the perfect stitches then going in the upward direction. So this is just one of the many stitches that you can do with this kind of thing, and when you're ready to go and ready to finish off, all you can just do then is to do a bind off. So here's where the strand is finished over here. So what you want to do is you want to start binding off this one here. So just feed it through the loops like you would in regular knitting, and you're just feeding them through and you're making your way back to the very start of where it's feeding in. And you're going to cut those loops, and I'm gonna show in a different tutorial later on casting off, or sorry, binding off in order to make this work. So you go into your very last one and you simply just want to cut 1 or 2 loops open so that you have a long strand, and then you just feed it in with the darning needle in order to secure. So it's a really neat concept. I think it's really awesome. So what we're gonna do for you is that we have a series of tutorials for you in order to learn the stitch work, but we also have many projects for you to be able to play with that actually makes a lot of sense. And this is really knitting in half the time, and because the stitch work is so big and the yarn is so big and fluffy, it's really quite awesome.